For more on the search costs, I spoke to Captain Mark Weiss. He's a member of the Spectrum Group and also a retired commercial pilot.
You know, you have countries, particularly China, who had over 150 people on the aircraft. I don't know that they're going to want to give up the search for their citizens. By the same token, it's not just the countries that are involved, but you've got a company like Boeing. There's over 1,200 777s flying in the world today. And there's a lot of people who may be skeptical about getting on that aircraft. Not to mention the numbers of airlines that are currently flying them that have millions of dollars invested in advertising to come fly our new fleets of aircraft, our new 777s. So there's a lot of desire to keep this going and perhaps having some of it funded by private industry.
Are you pleased that things are going relatively smoothly in your perspective?
Well, I'm not really sure how smooth they're going when they're talking now about giving the search a few more days and then perhaps coming back into port and reevaluating the sites where they are searching. It's a tremendous expense. You mentioned $250 million.
That's the estimate for just the underwater portion.
Well, and remember, you have to bring in private companies in many cases to do that. So that's absolutely just an estimate. I mean, the United States has allocated from its budget somewhere between $3.5 and $7.5 million. That's just one country allocating that much money. This is going to continue, and it's going to continue for a while.
Is it a fair statement that it, for a reasonable number, it doesn't really matter what it costs? They need to find out what happened, they need to find the debris, and they're going to keep at this until they get to their objective?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that money is not going to be the object with this. Again, if you were a family member that had somebody on that aircraft, how would you never try to go back to your government and say, what can you do for me? We're not getting enough information. And certainly the way this has been handled from the very beginning, with an enormous amount of disinformation or lack of information or lack of transparency to the general public and certainly to the families, they're going to put a lot of pressure on companies and governments to keep going.
You were a 777 pilot for American Airlines, flying this exact model aircraft, essentially.
Yes.
You must have a lot of questions going through your mind, and perhaps you can share with our viewers your thoughts as to what you think occurred on that flight.
Well, you know, early on we heard a lot of different things, that the aircraft had lithium batteries on it, that it could have been a cargo fire, it could have been some type of a mechanical problem. Having flown that airplane and having flown for commercial airlines for more than 20 years, my best thinking is that this had to be done by human hands. And the reason for that is, if that aircraft, when you put a flight plan into the computers on the ground, it's agreed to, it's read from the computer back to a paper flight plan, it's agreed to, and the route is there, and you check it against the papers.
There are two locator beacons on that aircraft. One can be switched off from the cockpit. One you have to go underneath the cockpit to do it. If you're not a seasoned pilot like yourself, would you really know how to do that?
Well, I think I know where you're driving with that, but you know, you have to know where it is. You don't necessarily have to be a seasoned pilot to do that. I mean, maintenance, generally the people that go down there are maintenance personnel. But in order to do that, it's kind of a rigorous process.
It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not even in the cockpit. It's not even in the cockpit where you have to go down into the belly of the aircraft, basically. And you need a special tool to access that. So I don't really buy that somebody went there to do that.
Could a non-commercial, somewhat seasoned pilot do the kind of turns up and down in terms of altitude that they're now talking about? Could someone like that do that on their own?
I think whoever did that had to have some flight training. Now, if you go back to what happened on 9/11 in the United States, they were not seasoned pilots, but they had some flight training. So they were able to use GPS coordinates to take that aircraft exactly where they wanted. But those turns, probably on the autopilot, but you can manually give inputs to the autopilot to go where you want. So that's what I believe actually happened.
Final thoughts. Do you think they are getting very close now to finding the black box and ultimately the debris field?
I wish I could say yes, but in truth, I don't know that they're that close yet. I think it's going to be some time before they're able to get it. I certainly want to be wrong, but I don't think I am.